Welcome back, amazing gentlemen and ladies. Today we are joined by a special guest, Luke Kendrat, from the host of Orthodoxy First. How you doing today, Luke?
Doing all right, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I reached out to you just a few days ago. It's kind of short notice, but I was curious if you wanted to hop on and kind of just talk about orthodoxy and culture. So much has been going on, and even in your own life, getting special shout outs from Fuentes and, hanging out with a lot of different Orthodox guys over in DC, and just the growth that I've seen on your own YouTube channel. So I just wanted you to come on and just kind of talk about what you're up to. Seems like you're really sort of making moves and reflect on culture, generally speaking. So, again, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
So to begin, the first thing that I wanted to get into was kind of you just describing what prompted you to create Orthodoxy First. What does it mean? What's it symbolize? And sort of just like, what is it as an enterprise?
Right. So Orthodoxy First is essentially, this movement where we as Orthodox Christians need to understand that our faith comes before everything. And I know, like you mentioned, Nick Fuentes, and he has America First. And I wanted to base it off that same idea, except with our faith. So our country, of course, yes, that's important. But we need to remember that in everything we do in our lives, God needs to come first. And that comes with Holy Orthodoxy. So when we look at politics, the way that we vote, right, we need to make sure that we're voting as if we are Orthodox Christians. Otherwise, we're gonna fall into severe issues. And I think we need to remember that, even in our own personal lives, everything we do has to be Orthodox. It's not just something that when you're in church on Sunday, you're an Orthodox Christian. That's not the case. It has to be every day, everything you do has to be Orthodox. And, I think that it's something that, unfortunately, Christianity itself, not just Orthodoxy, but Christianity itself has been lacking in the culture today. And I think that that's very noticeable. And by putting Orthodoxy first and by spreading this message, we can evangelize, of course, to others, but even work on it with people who are currently Orthodox Christians, because I think that the unfortunate trend within Orthodoxy itself has been people who are not taking their faith perhaps seriously enough by spreading the message and by really incorporating it into every aspect of their life. I'd like for it to ultimately be something that could become political, because I think that Orthodoxy and politics are not completely separate. And I think that we can see that throughout history. There's especially when you look at Imperial Russia or the Byzantine Empire, these two ideas were very closely knit. And I think that this is something that we could work on, perhaps bringing back. Mm-hmm. I know that you're familiar with Lauren Witzke, who recently ran for U.S. Senate in Delaware, and she's an Orthodox catechumen, as far as I'm aware. And this is something that we need to see more of this, and people who in America are putting America first, but putting their faith even before that. And that needs to be this idea that kind of comes before anything else, and it's something that is more important than anything else. So, put your country first with your politics and put your orthodoxy before that. And I think that if you start working on incorporating orthodoxy into your daily life, it's going to reflect in everything else you do. And it's a great way to evangelize and a great way to show people what we are really about. And that orthodoxy is more than a religion. It's a way of life. Yes. And I think that that's something that people need to remember, and they need to realize that. And it's something that unfortunately isn't talked about enough in the modern day. And one thing that I was talking about yesterday on my stream with David the Real Mad White is how the idea of orthodoxy and politics must be truly united, because otherwise, as I said, we're going to risk falling into heresy, and we're going to risk separating these ideas too distinctly, either being too far right or too far left, and you're going to end up forgetting that you are an Orthodox Christian when you vote or when you do anything publicly, especially. So I think it's important to remember that.
No, I totally agree with you, and that's one of the reasons I love what you're doing with Orthodoxy First, and helps remedy sort of the fracture in the mental psyche of America with secularism. And so secularism itself says basically that religion is important only as it stays within the parameters of the church on Sunday. And as soon as it spills out into the world, well, now it's trumped by secularism. So secularism itself, then by its very nature, promotes perennialism, that all religions are equal, because all religions are relegated to this little bitty category. that is just nice and it's useful and it's utilitarian and it helps people get through their lives. And that then leads to the degradation, because as soon as you take God out of society, society becomes, really a reflection of Satan himself, or evil, or however you want to understand that. And so getting people to see then that the theology has to come first, and then the theology has to inform your politics. And this is what has been so shocking to me in my own growth and journey into Orthodoxy, was joining a parish and then finding out how many people in the parish actually have very progressive worldviews. And so they go to the Orthodox Church. They may be, there every Sunday, and they're very pious individuals, they're very good individuals, yet in the same breath they support BLM, they support socialist ideologies, they support many of the things that actually historically persecuted Orthodox Christians. And so getting that idea in the front of people's minds that Orthodoxy does have to come first. It is a lifestyle, as you're saying, and it colors then so much of your life and how you're going to engage with the world. So
yeah,
go ahead.
And I think the most disappointing thing is when you have like Archbishop Elpiloforos, who is also promoting these progressive ideas, and he marched with BLM. And so I think you see a lot of, unfortunately, Greeks who are in the Greek archdiocese, and this is something that I've noticed as a trend. I mean, I grew up in the Greek Orthodox archdiocese, and you see them looking at him as an example. And it's unfortunate, because we should be able to look at our bishops as an example, but when they're putting these secularist, atheistic ideologies before orthodoxy, right, it really says a lot about the state of our current society, and unfortunately the state of our church. And I think that we need to be able to look at others who are perhaps protecting the faith and protecting the validity and the integrity of the faith in a better way. And there are, of course, several examples, beacons of light within Orthodoxy, who are holding true. But we need to make sure that our leaders, our church leaders, are doing that as well. And when you see the ecumenical patriarch with promoting ecumenism, and Elpiloforos are the same thing, and promoting these liberal and progressive ideologies in America, it's not a good sign for the state of our church.
No, it's not. And it's on us as Orthodox. And this is one of the things that gives me optimism with sort of what we are embedded in online. So this little small niche online culture that you, Dyer, David the Real Medwhite, myself, Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, is contributing to this sort of small niche community of people taking Orthodoxy more seriously, becoming more familiar with their theology, changing the ways of, that they engage with the world, their lives, and everything like that. And it then allows this growth of men who are going to be laity, the most of us, and it's on us to protect the tradition. Like, historically speaking, you look at the Council of Florence, when the bishops came back from the Council of Florence, it was on the laity to say, no, we're not reconciling and changing our theology and getting in step with Rome, which we see with Bartholomew. And again, the same things just reoccurring over and over and over, and it's on us as laity to know the faith and to stand up for it. And so it's almost too late, this is something that we could get into in regards to the salvageability of America itself and the sort of American experiment. Can it be salvaged? Certainly it can't be salvaged within a secular context, because you're trying to restart an experiment back to the beginning when you already know how it ends. And just the fact that this small online community is informing young men who are going to be the voices to resist the exact things that you're talking about, the sort of pernicious effects of ecumenicism and stuff arising in the church, progressive values and all that.
Yeah. I mean, we got to take it seriously. And, even when we're online, I think it's easy for a lot of guys to get carried away. I think that, but I think it's a good thing to have, this group of young men and women who are online, and they're able to share their faith. And like you said, I see a lot of guys who are just, they're so adamant about what they believe in. It's a fantastic thing to see that, and it's very encouraging. And a lot of guys, one thing that's really helpful is the Dyer Cord, like Jay Dyer's Discord. And it's wonderful to see this group of guys and girls, and now they have the channel for women especially. And it's great to see that, and the faith flourishing online. And unfortunately, I think that there's kind of this attitude this attitude amongst people who are not Orthodox Christians that Orthodoxy is like some online religion, and I don't, I can't stand that personally. I hear that a lot, it couldn't be further from the truth. I think that the unfortunate reality is that there are just not many Orthodox churches in America, and people aren't really introduced to Orthodoxy except for it being online, because of course when you're online you interact with people all across the world. And I think that, the fact that we have a good online presence shows that, if anything, Orthodoxy is even stronger than other religions around the world, and we have guys who are willing to take that to the next level and to act on their beliefs, even when they are, like we said, not only in church, when they're online, right, and they are evangelizing the faith. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. And the fact that you don't see that in the Catholic Church or in the various Protestant denominations is really a good sign for Orthodoxy. And right. I think that personally, I think it's brought a lot of people to the faith. I know Jay Dyer has brought countless people to the faith, and this is something we need to encourage. And I think that the more priests and the more clergy in general that we have online, the better it's going to be, because they'll be able to moderate. People can say whatever they want online. You're going to have some very zealous, guys who take it a little bit too far maybe online. But I think that the more that we get people online, and this next generation coming into seminary, and that is they're going to eventually end up being priests. These guys being online can really only help, because right. they'll be able to correct theology, and they'll be able to already have had a presence online, and then be able to now have the credentials to back that up, and people will take what they're saying more seriously, and the faith can be spread even better on places like Twitter and Discord and Instagram, and it's only going to get better and better from here. So I think it's a beautiful thing that we're online in the way that we are.
Yeah, and the fervor behind Orthodoxy again helps a lot of these young men who are encountering these different voices online to see the contrast between Orthodoxy and culture right now. So if we were, step back 20 or 40 years ago, it'd be more difficult for the people encountering Orthodoxy to not just see it as another religious option among all these different options that are equal options. However, given the globalist context in which we find ourselves, in the globalist political movements that we're in opposition to, Orthodoxy and its theology, by learning more and more and more about it, you can then grasp conceptually how it is distinctly in opposition to then the majority of trends in the world. And so for example, my encounter with so many people who have got into the Orthodox Church, they've had to have the converts. I know that you grew up in it, and I want to ask you a little bit about your journey and taking your faith more seriously. But one of the things that I've noticed with the converts is Orthodoxy, they've had a lived experience, and it's through those experiences that they are now seeing the validity of Orthodoxy, things that you can't share with somebody, right? You can't just show it's 2 + 2 = 4 and this is why I'm Orthodox. It's that, no, actually I've had all this crazy past, and it's this and this and it's this, and it's only the fact that I've been living this life that I now can put all these dots together and now find Orthodoxy as a real home. And so it's just wonderful that we're able to, in the age of Orwell, I mean, this is the sort of Orwellian times, that we're also consolidating ourselves as Orthodox men. We don't need millions and millions of people. I mean, we just need a critical mass. Shoot, if we just had 10,000, 50,000 men that lived the Orthodox life and represented that in those values, that just has a cascade effect that people can't really imagine, the ripple effect in culture. And so that's, to me, what is exciting. And that's going to lead into what I also want to talk to you about in regards to fitness, masculinity, men's bodies, and all that stuff. But before we get there, as I mentioned, I wanted to ask you, so you grew up Orthodox. Again, many of us online, and shout out to Dyer. You mentioned he had a lot of converts. He helped me. I took an Orthodox theology course before, so I was familiar with the Loskys and the Florovskys and the Luths of the world. And then I encountered Jay's work, and I acquired the vocabulary to understand it. And then he brought his apologetics, and that was really the sort of hook, line, and sinker for me in connecting a lot of this stuff. So shout out to him. Appreciate him. But what is your own journey? How would you describe it? Have you always been fairly fervent or upright in your Orthodox faith? Is it something that's you kind of acquired as you gotten older? Can you just kind of talk to us about that?
Yeah. I mean, so I would say that when I was younger, I could say for certain throughout elementary school and most of middle school, I wanted to be a priest. And this was, kind of my dream and everything. And I was very, very focused on it. But then, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, high school happens, and I think that we get kind of entrenched in the this tide of anti-Christianity, and you're made fun of for holding true to your beliefs, and you're made fun of for wanting to go to church on Sunday and for really taking everything seriously. So that's exactly what happened to me, and it was unfortunate. And I think that I fell away throughout high school, and I stopped going to church for a little while. And it wasn't that I didn't believe. I can't say that there was a point where I ever didn't believe in God. But I can say for certain that I acted like I didn't believe in God for a long time.
Right.
And this is a very unfortunate thing that I think a lot of young men fall into, a very unfortunate trap.
Yep.
Because we're so wrapped up in what everyone else is doing. We're so wrapped up in being on the varsity football team, right, and trying to get a girlfriend, whatever. And you waste a lot of time with these things that are temporary, and that's all they are.
Right.
And you end up losing sight of what really matters. That's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. And it was the end of my senior year, and a lot of things kind of happened at once. And I won't get into those details, but a lot of things happened at once. And I was like, you know what? I think it's about time that I started taking things more serious. And college was right around the corner. And I started asking myself, what kind of a man do I want to be in college? What kind of a man do I want to be later on in life when I'm, looking for a wife? Is this the guy that I want to present? And I couldn't say with a good conscience that it was. And I ended up really having to look back to the church. And I found a lot of truth there. And it was right after my senior year that I really started looking back into the faith and going to church again, starting to study theology, and especially church history. I always took an interest in church history. And I started to act more like it. I took certain things out of my life. I stopped swearing, and doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing, because I realized that I truly needed to put orthodoxy first. And I think that when I started going back to church, I started talking to my priest a lot more. He helped guide me back onto that path. And so, college came around, and I'd say that it was my first semester of college when I saw the complete degeneracy that is the modern American university.
Where do you go to school at?
I'm at George Mason University.
George Mason. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But last year I was at Mary Washington, and which is down in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It's a small school. And it's very, very liberal, as most universities are. And I think that when when I went to my first college party, and I was like, what is this? Is this what I want to be spending my time doing? And it really kind of shook me and threw me for a loop. And I was like, you know what? It's about time to start really turn around and cutting this out of my life, and cut swearing out of my life, and all these things that are nothing but degenerate. And I ended up really being able to come closer to the church. And I started going to the Nativity of the Theotokos Greek Orthodox Church down in Fredericksburg. And that's when I started getting into more of the ecclesiology and the study of the church politics. And that convinced me to want to go to a ROCOR church.
So that was what, a year ago? 2 years?
That was a year ago.
A year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was freshman year of college. And, it was a difficult journey coming back, because I think when you spend so much time in this degeneracy, and you spend so much time wasting time with things that don't matter, it's difficult for you to want to make that trip back.
Yes.
But I think that it's, when you do, and obviously I'm still a work in progress, my goodness.
Oh yeah.
It's something, it's something that, you feel like you're truly closer to God, and you feel better about everything you're doing in your life. And that's exactly how I felt, and just more confident, because I don't think that I need to prove myself to anyone. And I think that the only one who I do need to prove myself to is God, right?
Right.
And working on abiding by his laws, because I think if you're working on abiding by the laws of people, you're going to get lost. And, I think that you come off as more of a confident person when you're closer to God. And, you end up being truly who God wants you to be, and who God has planned for you to be. And that's someone better than you could ever dream of, and better than anything that I could have ever hoped with my life being without God. So
no, I love that. I love that sentiment that having a close relationship to God makes you more confident. It does, and it also gives you a sort of catalyst to want to become the best version of yourself. And that's something that I've been trying to promote, just generally speaking, in a multitude of ways. And I know that you've echoed a lot of these similar sentiments in regards to fitness, your health, your morality, of course. So the first thing that you're talking about is sort of living as if God didn't exist, even though maybe you still believed in God. And that's certainly, I mean, a lot of people watching already know my past, but like sex, high school, sex, girlfriends, uh, that has been one of the harder things for me to consciously give up and become more, deliberately, intentionally celibate for a year. And so you mentioned you have a girlfriend, and I don't mean to get too personal, but is the preservation of sex something that you were trying to save towards marriage with you and your girlfriend, or how are you navigating that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really just comes down to like narrowing it down so you don't really have temptation. Just like avoiding those locations that might be temptations, and making sure that you are on the same page. And I think that's important. And just finding someone, finding a girlfriend in general, making sure you're on the same page with these sorts of things. Because then if you're going into a relationship and you don't have that same theology and that same those same morals in terms of sex, you're going to run into issues and you're going to be tempted. Like you said, I've run into that issue in the past. It's not an easy thing. But yeah, I think that when you focus the relationship on God, and when God is at the forefront and the center of the relationship, it's much easier to be chaste, right, and to not have to worry about that as much,
Right.
and make sure you're doing good and clean things, right? That's always the importance. So
Right. No, I totally agree with that. And being upfront about that, I know. Um, so I'm 31, and having engaged in those behaviors basically since I was 16, it makes it difficult to form relationships where that's not part of it. And in fact, I've never had a quote unquote godly relationship with a girl. I've had great relationships, what I would consider healthy, harmonious relationships, but honest relationships, but one without sex or with, those activities. I've never had that. And so before, really this whole YouTube channel, and when I started, I went full time in August of last year. I was taking it much more serious, and then wanting to be the kind of man that the girl that I'm looking for is also looking for. And
exactly.
I've been trying to tell this to young guys too, to think about themselves. It's so easy for Orthodox men to want to bash women, and again, or just traditional. It's just like a thing on traditional Christian, online culture, generally speaking, is always bad mouthing women. And even though tongue in cheek, I'll say things, but as a movement, we really should just get rid of this, because it's upon the men. The degradation of American society is because men became weak. Men decided to have vices that were materialistic, and because of that, broke that connection between man and God, Adam and God, and instead began to listen to the world, Satan to Eve, Eve to Adam. And so the inversion then of authority is the representation of the society that we have now. And just trying to break, so that I'm saying that because I'm trying to find relationships with people, and then knowing that the sort of tendencies of intimacy then tend to lead towards sex or something like that. Trying to break those behavior patterns is very difficult.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's not something that can just happen with a snap of your finger. I think it's something that takes a lot of prayer, a lot of patience, and really, like you said, being the man who you want to be able to be presentable to a woman for a wife in the future. That's something that's important. You don't want to just be some bum, right, who can't control his lust.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that inability to control your lust is reflective of the weak man, despite his physical stature, not just a weak man who then is going to be carried away with the tides of culture himself. Because to be able to resist is really a fundamental principle of masculinity itself. Resist the temptations, resist the degeneracy of culture, resist the enemy. It's about establishing boundaries and then standing up and defending those boundaries. So
Right.
yeah, and I think just being honest about this stuff is helpful for younger people, younger guys trying to go through this stuff and navigate the world. And so think about, I've been trying to say, is think about then who it is that you want, right? We don't have to be, I know I'm a bit analytical, so I have like a checklist of what I'm looking for. It's not exactly appropriate, and it's not recommended, but know what it is that you're looking for, and then envision what would that person be looking for, because often it's not who you are right now. And so because the nature of the way we imagine and sort of idealize the future is we have an ideal of what we want, and because it's an ideal, it's sort of outside of who we actually are right now. And so if you want that ideal, you're going to have to change who you are to become the thing in which they're also looking for.
Right. Yeah, it's not not just a selfish thing, and you gotta really make sure that I think that comes with like we were talking about, just with like being. I think this really comes back to just not being someone who larps like online. I think you see a lot of guys who are like, acting like they're these trad guys and everything online. And it's like, they're refusing to do things like get in the gym, and,
yes.
and
yeah, let's go there.
So I think that's something where, yeah, it's just a matter of not putting yourself first in life and realizing that you're going to be responsible for another person and a family at some point. And you have to start taking that seriously from now.
Right.
And that's, one thing that has hit me recently, where, it's not just me in my life. And I think, too many guys forget that even when they're growing up with their mom and their dad at home, it's like a lot's taking care for them.
Right.
But they don't have to do much on their own. And now coming to this stage in my life, it's like, well, okay, I'm responsible for a lot more. And it's going to come to that point in the next couple of years where, I'm responsible for a family. And I think that, that's something that guys need to start taking more seriously and thinking about. It needs to be in the forefront of our minds much more than it is for a lot of people.
No, I couldn't agree. I could not agree more. And one of the ways in which I've talked about that sort of delay of the maturation of men. So you talked about even growing up in a stable, strong household that so much is taken care of, and then we don't have any initiation rites. There is no transition in Western culture from being an adolescent to being an adult. What is it? Your driver's license? Is it your ability to buy, gambling tickets, lottery tickets? Right. Is it your ability to drink alcohol? It's like, and none of those then are real rites of passages. So then it creates this confusion on when exactly are you a man? Is it when you're 45 years old? Is it when you're 21? When is it? And so and that's why I talk about Christ again being an archetype, being our icon. It's all about responsibility, really. And so Christ dying for this. Yep, exactly. So Christ dying for the sins of the world is actually the most ultimate and masculine thing you can do. One, he takes responsibility for everybody, and then it is self-sacrificial. And so that then should be a sort of guiding post for us as men. Okay, I need to take more and more responsibility in my life, and I need to make the enterprises that I'm engaging in not so much hedonistic, but something that's a little bit more selfless and for the collective or for others.
Right. And I think we're encouraged, unfortunately, we're encouraged today to partake in this hedonistic lifestyle. And I think that it's something when, you do become a man, and like you said, it's very ambiguous, when do you? But when you start growing up, the first things that are kind of thrown at you are drugs and alcohol and sex. And these are what are supposed to be appealing to us in our modern culture. And I think that we need to reject that. And like you said, be more like Christ and be more sacrificial and selfless.
Right.
And it's something that's lost on too much of the modern generation today. And, people want too much to LARP, like I said, and they want to pretend like this is a part of their life, but they're refusing to actually do anything about it. And it's because, unfortunately, it's not encouraged by society to be like that. Society wants to completely get rid of masculinity and to completely deprive us of what makes us men. Right. And that's what has led to the current crisis with which we're faced today in society, and where, like you said, there's a reversal of the roles of the man and the woman, and it's all so ambiguous now, and there's no real leadership coming from the strong man. And it's discouraged to have strong men in positions of power, and it's very, very unfortunate. And I think this is something that we're trying as a movement now to bring back.
Yes.
And I think, Orthodoxy is very masculine.
Yes.
And we need to remember this. And I'm not too good about this, but I think this is even a part of it. It's like, growing out the beard,
Yeah.
And there was someone the other day who tweeted, like, I didn't say grow out your beard if it looks good. Grow out your beard, period. And it's like, yeah, it's not easy to do, but I think that's a part of masculinity. And it's discouraged today, and you don't see a lot of guys walking around with huge beards. But it's cool, and it's masculine, and it's a piece of who you are.
Well, and you see the beard actually, I would say, being used in a sort of inversion. So one of the reasons why I say it's so popular amongst like hipsters and hipster culture is to really represent a faux form of masculinity. Is that really their lives? So the beginning of our conversation on strength is really standing up for Christian morality. So there is no real basis for their masculinity, and so then they exude it through certain ways. And one of them, I think, is tattoos, piercings, ear gauges, and beard, stuff like this, that is supposed to represent a sort of faux masculinity. So related to that, then, so I want to continue in this line of strength, and because I talked about Orthodoxy. I do believe Orthodoxy is more masculine, and it's a much more masculinized form of Christianity, which is the way it was intended. This is the church founded at 33 AD. So can you speak, because one of the things that's kind of come up online is that we are sort of, to use the lingo of the kids, the sort of ortho chads. I know that you like to you like to get into the gym and pump some weights. I know I love to. I've been trying to produce more recently what I'm calling Logos Fitness, building temples to house the spirit, and basically just showing men how you build your body. And by building your body, you're developing physical strength, but you're also developing discipline, which then feeds back onto that Christian morality, because that's still about discipline. So can you just talk about, I think you mentioned you ran track or something in high school, but can you talk about maybe your experience with athletics, and then how that relates now to your physical fitness and how you understand the sort of theology of the body?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very important to be strong and to hit the gym, to be athletic. And I think, when I really first started lifting, I was in like ninth grade, and I was with a football team, and I loved it right off the bat. I felt accomplishment, a sense of accomplishment, and I think that was really what drove me to continue wanting to do it, and to be able to find something that I'm good at, that makes me feel good, right, and that is beneficial to who I am as a person. And it really continued on through the remainder of high school, and I started putting on more and more weight. And obviously, like you said, I ran track in high school, my first year of college, and that was a part of it too. Where anything to be able to work hard and to feel like I'm accomplishing something. And I think it's incredibly important, and it's something that's lost on too many people. And as many of these things are, and I think in terms of working out, it really is just trying to be the best version of who you can be, and that level of discipline, because it takes discipline to wake up in the morning and to want to go to the gym. It's not an easy thing to do. A lot of people will do 2-a-days even, and this is something where you start to fall in love with it the more you continue to do it, and it is reflected in the rest of your personality. The more that you work out and the stronger you are, the more you're going to want to incorporate that same mentality into the rest of your life. And you want to be disciplined in everything you do. It's not just in the gym. You take it to other parts of your life. Okay, well, wait a minute. Like, the way that I start thinking of it is like, okay, well, if I'm good at working out and I'm good at having that level of discipline to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym, why don't I start doing the same thing with my prayer rule? Why don't I start working on praying more often with that same level of discipline and working to achieve, a closer relationship with God, and have a sense of accomplishment there, right? And I think that these are things that are very closely entwined. You're not just I think that it's inevitable that if you start working out, you're going to want to incorporate that same attitude into every aspect of your life, because you feel such a sense of accomplishment. And I mean, I'm sure it's been the same for you, where it's just like, the minute you put up, let's say you hit 300 on bench, you want to hit 305 as soon as you possibly can. You start laying out a plan, laying out a rule, and being disciplined. And I think that this is a very good thing, and the gym itself encourages masculinity, and I love seeing people in there. And I would never discourage anyone from going to the gym. It doesn't matter where you're starting. It doesn't matter if you're overweight, you're underweight, whatever. Going into ninth grade, I was like 5'10" and 120 pounds. I mean, I was a stick, but it's like, then, you start working out more and more and seeing this progress,
Yes.
and it becomes a part of you.
Yes.
And you don't want to go a day without the gym, and it becomes more difficult. Starts to take more discipline to take an off day than it does to go to the gym. And
that's the
it's
fact.
Just something.
Yeah.
It becomes somewhat of an addiction in a good way.
Yeah.
And when you have that level of discipline in one aspect of your life, you're going to want to take it to the rest of your life. And I think this is something where back to the prayer rule, a lot of people are very critical of monks in Orthodox society, and they say monks don't do much, whatever. They sit and pray all day. I don't think people realize how difficult that is.
Right.
Just like bodybuilders in the gym working on their physique, in the monastery, you're working on your spirituality, and you're praying like crazy, and it's that same level of discipline. And that is too often these are two separate ideas, but they need to be one and the same. And even praying when you're working out, I think, is a good thing. And I asked my priest a long time ago, if it was okay to listen to chant while I work out. And he said, absolutely, that's all you should be listening to. And just remembering that everything we do is for the glory of God. Right. And this working out, I think this is something that needs to be avoided, is working out just for yourself or to look good for the girls.
Right.
That's not what it's for. It's to glorify God. And when you have strong men and masculine men representing orthodoxy, this is a good precedent, right? And this is a good thing that we need to make sure that we have more of. And that's why lifting needs to be encouraged in the Orthodox faith as a part of masculinity. It's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time because of how much discipline it requires. And I think that more and more people need to start doing that. And I think, when I started creating my own workout plan, and I started getting more discipline, I started noticing better and better results, and feeling all around more accomplished than I did previously. Right. And it's a good representation of who you are as a person. You look more well put together, and you look like you're ready to accomplish something great. People don't take you seriously if you sit around all day and you stuff your face with McDonald's. No one's going to take your opinion seriously. You look at these podcasters like, what's his name? Bosch. And he's like, I mean, dude, like, I don't want to listen to anything that guy says.
I know, right? Because he embodies his values. And this is one of the things that there's so much there that I want to comment on. So let me take this systematically. Related to all this, and related to your example with Vosh, is that we embody our values whether we are knowingly doing it or not, that you're always living it out. And so this is why, agreeing with you wholeheartedly, that the Orthodox movement, the Ortho-Bro movement, the Ortho-Chad, whatever you want to call it, it's that we have to embody our values. And so when you're talking about the sort of spillover of the discipline within the gym affecting different aspects of your life, or even drawing an analogy, a comparison between your prayer life and your fitness life, that also bleeds into your intellectual life. And one of the things that I always talk to people about is that there is no difference between me sitting in this chair over here and reading books for hours at a time and going to the gym. It's the same process in my mind. It's working different things. I'm working my body physically, but when I'm sitting there in that chair and I'm disciplining myself to sit and read for long periods of time, I'm building my mind. So I'm still lifting, I'm still working out. I'm still growing at who I am as a person. And then the same thing with the spiritual life with the prayer. And so as Orthodox, we should have a sort of trifecta in regards to our prayer, our minds, our education, knowing the theology, knowing the world, philosophy, whatever it is that you're wanting to learn more about, and then also your body. And then when people encounter you in the world, like you're saying, there's a real presence behind you, because you don't just look like that on average, right? Cleanliness is godliness, but if you just let things occur, things become filthy. So the fact that cleanliness is godliness, cleanliness is something you always have to be working on, and then is inspiring, and it's awe-inspiring to people who witness it. Same thing with the fitness stuff, because it's something that you constantly have to continually be doing. And so next point related to what you're talking about was that being in the gym is a form, I forget exactly how you phrase it. Basically, it's sort of a masculine process. And I would say that it's masculine at a multitude of different ways. One of them being literally biologically, it helps produce testosterone. And if you're low T, you're probably slightly depressed, you're weak, you're probably tired, you have no sexual drive, your animosity towards women, All these different things will arise because of it. And
Yep.
so you need to build T. You need higher T levels. And so one way is obviously, again, talk to your priest about your diet and all this stuff. But certainly eating red meat, we know for a fact that helps. So eating a higher protein diet, but just lifting weights is going to help build bone density, which is something way more difficult to take away from you. Like I've been lifting for a while. If I just stop lifting tomorrow, yes, my muscles will begin to slowly atrophy and get smaller and smaller, but the density of my bones I'll keep. And that's what you want to be able to stand upright when you're 80 years old. You don't want to be hunched back because you never lifted a weight, and therefore your bones, there's no real density there to uphold your skeletal frame, and so you slowly atrophy just like the muscles did. You don't want that. You want to be able to stand up, so you want to build that bone density. And then the value system within the gym is about competency. And so this is a big one that I've noticed, and I try to tell men that you have to become competent, whether it's about your career, whether it's about being a lover and being a good relationship partner, competent within your social, spiritual life. Like all the like masculinity is tied to competency. And if you're not a competent man, how can you ever assume that a woman's going to submit to you? Why would they submit to you? Often, especially if they're more competent in their life than you are, because then they're gonna take the dominant role in the relationship. And the competency then that's embedded within the gym, men becoming, I mean, you can see somebody's competency in their body, like, you know, how competent are they at lifting weights, developing their body, like you said, the discipline and all that stuff. So the value system, competition, all this stuff is our masculine qualities. And so I've talked about Dyer wanting to debate and all this stuff. I talked about masculinity, and some people go off the deep end and think that I want everybody to be a bodybuilder. It's like, no, masculinity, like when you think of competency and competition as a masculine quality, that can be displayed in a multitude of ways, one of which is wanting to compete in the realm of ideas from reading books, knowing so-and-so, and then wanting to hash that out publicly. That's a form of competition. That's a form of competition. That is a masculine process.
Yes.
And so that's just that same thing's just embodied when you go to the gym and lift weights and do that for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, and what you said about like reading too, it's like that's a part of it where it's like, you know, okay, work out in the gym, do what you can, and make sure that in every aspect of your life you're doing that. You have that same level of discipline. That's how you become the best person that you can be, and that's how you end up glorifying God.
Right.
And you know, truly, I mean, a partner won't take you seriously if you're sitting around and you're doing nothing, and they have their life more put together than you do. You know, your significant other will not, especially in our case, you know, looking for a wife, not going to take you seriously. And like I said, you know, Vash, it's like I don't take him seriously. Right. I take guys seriously when they have a strong presence, when they're well spoken, when they're strong, when they're well read. These are important qualities that men need to have. And this is how you change the world, truly. Yes. I mean, I know it sounds a bit cliche, nope. But, you know, that's how you start these movements that can grow and flourish, because, you know, you encourage other men to have that same attitude about life, and to be able to grow and improve all for the glory of God, and realizing that there's a higher purpose to it all. And I think that that's what's kept me going in the gym. Right. You know, I mean, when I first started, yeah, part of it was like, okay, well, a girl's going to look at me. That's going to be cool. You know, I like to see that. But, you know, I think the more that you really get into it, and when you really start getting at it, you realize there's a higher purpose to everything that you do in life. And that goes for the gym just the same. And when you're working out in the gym and you're glorifying God's name, you're, in a sense, evangelizing, because then you talk to people about it, they're going to take you more seriously. You know, physiognomy is a very important part of life, you know, and that's how you spread a good message to people, is by really having good physiognomy, and they'll take you seriously. So it's very important.
Yeah. Even if you wanted to get into theological concepts, I don't know where Orthodoxy stands on the concept of hylomorphism, the sort of Aristotelian idea that the soul gives shape to the body. And physiognomy and all this stuff is reflective from that interpretation. One of the ways in which it was historically interpreted is that that's actually a sort of reflection of your own soul, because your soul is what gives form to matter. That's an Aristotelian idea, more prominent within Catholicism. So I'll leave Dyer or somebody to put me in check there. But it's certainly an interesting concept. But continuing the same thread, so if those who are still following at a high degree, we see that we began with talking about what Orthodoxy first is. Then we got into the sort of spirituality and masculinity, and this is continuing into then what I want to ask you is, how does Orthodoxy, as you're talking about the masculine qualities, this is how you want to change the world, this is how you change culture. What is the role of Orthodoxy in America? What is the role of Orthodoxy in the in the current climate that we find ourselves in? What is the role of Orthodoxy in some of these alternative streams like the Groypers or the America First movement or the pro-Trump movement or the anti-globalist movement? I mean, like, where? So speak now to Orthodoxy being the vehicle that encapsulate a lot of the things in which we say is necessary for society to move in the right direction. How can Orthodoxy fulfill that role?
Yeah, well, I mean, just like you said, it's like the vehicle. I think that what ends up happening is you see Orthodoxy, unlike the rest of these religions around the world and these false religions around the world, Orthodoxy has held true through the test of time. And you look at like Protestantism, you look at Catholicism, what have they done? They've all westernized in the sense of getting rid of these fundamental traits of things like masculinity. And I mean, I don't want to bash any Roman Catholic priests, but they're rather effeminate because they're not married. They don't, yeah, and yet they're in the world.
Yeah.
This presents the problem of the sex scandals that you've seen.
Exactly. How can you get marriage advice from somebody who is supposed to be celibate, never married, and all these, like, it's like, again, getting sexual advice from a virgin. It's like that's not how it works. Like, that's a terrible way to actually understand. You'd want to get marriage advice from a priest who's married, who has a healthy family, and if he doesn't have that healthy family, end up getting divorced, they're not going to be able to be a priest. So it's just the whole structure. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's so mind-bending that people think that way.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Like, when I look at Orthodox priests, I see strong men who have families of like 5+ children,
right? And
they've got their strong beards and everything, and it's like Father Josiah Trenum is a good example. And it's like, these are guys who you want to listen to, and I think that Orthodoxy best envelops, I guess, this idea of masculinity through its encouragement of either the married life or the monastic life. There's no in between.
Right.
You can't be someone who is just a bachelor for the entirety of your life. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Because that's hedonism. And again, that's a failure to mature, because that's a failure to have any sort of self-sacrificial engagements, responsibilities in your life. It's all about you, which leads to the original sin, which is then a worship of oneself. And so you can see from right there, the whole worldviews, they split apart.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, a lot of people view Orthodoxy for that reason as kind of a safe haven, something that is anti-globalist and has remained true for 2,000 years. And when people look to Orthodoxy, they see what is the true faith in its entirety.
Right.
And I think the world right now is full of young men who feel disenfranchised. We feel like the world has turned our back on us, and we are not encouraged to be what God called us to be. We're not encouraged to live our lives in a good way that glorifies God. Right. We're encouraged to be distracted from doing anything but that, right? And we're constantly thrown with this frenzy of advertisements that show gay couples and masculated men, and it's just like that's not what Orthodoxy stands for.
Right.
People see that. People notice that. Young men, young women, they notice that, and they come to it because Orthodoxy doesn't try to make women feel like they have to be men, and of course it doesn't take away the masculinity from men.
Right.
So we end up seeing the beauty of what a man and a woman in a healthy relationship should truly look like, where you have a strong, dominant man, and the woman is subservient to the mission of the man, which is, of course, to serve the wife. And I think that these work in perfect symphony, and this is how you end up attracting guys who feel, like I said, disenfranchised and who are looking for the truth in the world. You're not going to find it in any other place, and people realize that. And I know a lot of converts who I've spoken to realize that, and they come to Orthodoxy because they know that it's maintained through all these years what men and women truly should be, and how we incorporate that into our relationship with God. It's not something that separates those two ideas. And I think that that's a very important part of Orthodoxy, and a very important part of what is going to lead it into this next generation. I think that just as much as now you see guys who are promoting these progressive and liberal ideologies, you see a lot of guys who are promoting traditionalism.
Right.
And I think that the search for traditionalism and the desire to return to tradition will inevitably lead to a return to orthodoxy.
Yes.
Because
I agree.
if you keep going down that rabbit hole, I'm telling you, that's what you're going to find.
Right.
You're not going to find your answers in Catholicism or in Protestantism or in Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever.
Right.
They're not there. Orthodoxy is all of that in its entirety. You cleanse your soul of the bad things, and that's where I've talked to priests who talk about, oh yeah, the Buddhists get it right with step one, with ridding yourself of all earthly distractions.
Right.
They fail on step two, which is of course to fill yourself with Christ.
Right.
And Orthodoxy, combining these two ideas, it creates the strongest person that you can be, because everything you're doing is for the glory of God. And if you have God at the head of everything you're doing, which is what Orthodoxy of course promotes, you're going to live a happy life and you're going to feel successful in your life, because you're not, like we said, you're not doing it for you. And
Right.
Orthodoxy, as far as I know, is really the only faith that promotes that with such fervor.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing that needs to continue to be encouraged, because our modern society is not encouraging that, and they're discouraging men and women from achieving what they are truly meant to achieve, what they have been given, by God. It's like they're wasting their lives away trying to achieve what by the world standards is considered a good life, and at the end of it all, they feel miserable. They've lived their entire lives drinking and smoking and whatever, having sex outside of marriage. These are things that Orthodoxy discourages, and it's difficult. It's difficult in the beginning. It's really difficult always. But I think that people are realizing that they need to live a difficult lifestyle in order to accomplish anything.
Right. Or to have meaning, right? And so the carrying of one's cross, I'm tempted by things every single day. And for me, I haven't noticed things getting easier. If anything, after becoming received into the church, I feel like things have ratcheted up for me. Like the temptations are more difficult to not engage with. And so, and this was told to me by my priest before I even got chrismated a couple weeks before, is that asked me if I really wanted to do this. I said, yeah, of course. Or actually, I half jokingly, I said, I think so. But he said that he felt for me that my life was actually going to get more difficult, that I was going to be attacked. And he said it's because of what I do online and what I promote that he felt like I was going to be a target. And I don't know if it's him saying that primed me in a way or what, but the week before I got chrismated and then after chrismation has been way more intense for me in regards to some of the passions and things than I was going to expect. And so is that me becoming more conscientious of the spiritual war over my own soul? Maybe. Is it me having this sort of internalized guilt because I'm trying to transition of who I was into somebody who is a new person of who I am, and therefore I'm constantly reminded by I don't know. It's like I can't put my finger on, but I do know, and I've even said this to Subdeacon Mark, who's come on here before, about how everything just seemed to ratchet it up. So carrying your cross is much more difficult. Living the Orthodox lifestyle, I am not in a position to fast yet. So that's a whole other dimension of the difficulty of the Orthodox life.
Right.
But I don't plan on doing that for the rest of the year. Maybe I'll try to start slow. The way that I am naturally, I'm somebody who eases into things because I don't like failing. And so because of my aversion to failing, I don't like to just go all in on something, because often you're not going to be successful. And so I tend to do things as I slowly get better and better, or take on more of something. So I do want to start getting into the fast, and I'd love to eventually on my fitness stuff talk about how you maintain your body through an Orthodox liturgical calendar. But I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Right. And I almost felt like all the red meat, because I was more on a sort of carnivore diet. I haven't been eating as much red meat since post-chrismation, but before that, I eat at least a steak every single day. And I almost felt like it was necessary to bring my body back to baseline, to recover from all the estrogen, all the things that are out there in the water and the food and the things that we eat, engage with, take in our body. And so I was just trying to get my body back to a sort of masculine baseline with testosterone and muscle development and everything. So, but now I do want to get into the liturgical and the fasting and stuff like that. But yeah, the America Orthodoxy, as you're saying, fulfills so much of the yearnings of men right now in the world. So the absence of meaning, the absence of responsibility, transcendence, right? We're talking about God. We're talking about the creator of the universe. And is there a creator of the universe? And and then taking that investigation, it's way deeper than talking about the universe, caring about you, or these things are real wishy-washy new age concepts that really have no weight once you begin to critically analyze them at a philosophical level. However, we have a whole worldview, a whole paradigm that you bring your philosophical hammer and try to shatter, tear down what we've built. It's actually very difficult. And this is again what got me into Orthodoxy. I've said this on many streams before, is that I don't recommend the way that I got into it, but for me, the way that God's providence worked is he answered the objections I had to allow my heart to enter Orthodoxy, to receive. And it's very intellectual. Like if I didn't have that semester of theology and built a whole lexicon and vocabulary to understand these things, even though I'm not Orthodox, but I'd like that concept of logos. And I love how this is different from the other forms of Christianity. I see how this connects with the Greek philosophical tradition, and wow, this is really interesting, but I'm not Orthodox. And eventually it became so undeniable that I had to become Orthodox because of the validity of the tradition coming at me at so many different ways. But that intellectualism was necessary for me to accept it. And so I'm very thankful for God to offer that. But that is another thing that Orthodoxy offers, is the sort of intellectualism that many in the New Age or the psychedelics or whatever, they see Christianity as being almost too simpleton, right? Of course, they don't know the theology or anything like that, but that's kind of the general sentiment, even within culture, right? You talk about American Christians, and then, there's just like this sort of stereotypical malaise over the American Christians. Like this person who, they're probably not the most intelligent, they're probably not the most up-to-date. We live in a modern world now, but that's not the case at all once you actually get into it, and you see that the exact opposite is true. And so it offers meaning, it offers discipline, it offers a sort of intellectualism, it offers real transcendence. And ultimately, what leads then to the end is it offers real salvation. And so that's what it's all about. And connecting this then, that of what Orthodoxy offers, the masculinity, what are some of your more personal thoughts, like when you were in DC, when you met Fuentes and some of the other Orthodox guys? How do you see Orthodoxy being received at more of a pop cultural level? So it's not the heady, dire stuff, but like Orthodoxy as something that we got to get, because we have to get people in, and then they can go on their journey wherever they're going to go. Maybe there will be the next Dyer or something like that, but not everybody begins there. And so, can you just speak to then Orthodoxy First and Orthodoxy at the sort of pop cultural level?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like I said, it's good. It's great we have an online presence for one thing. I think too many people, unfortunately, are just not really in tune with what exactly Orthodoxy is. And like, I don't know, speaking of Fuentes, I don't know if you watched his debate with Jay Dyer from like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't. But he didn't catch that the church in Rome is not the first church, and that was kind of the crux of the debate, was that he was under the common sort of Catholic euphemism that they exist in the church founded by Peter, and it's the one true church. But Peter and Paul also founded the Antiochian church before Rome. So
it's just because Peter died in Rome. That's the only reason.
I know, and it's that argument. That's why it's like that argument is so dumb if you maybe just haven't encountered the other side of it. But Fuentes actually has me blocked on Twitter.
Really?
I have no idea what I said. I imagine it was probably my neotenous critiques of some of the Groypers. But I don't have any particular beef with Fuentes, but apparently he took umbrage with something that I said, which is fine. I probably do believe it, so I don't take it back, but it is interesting.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is like, I see a lot of these guys, these Groypers are primarily Catholic, and I think that a lot of them just are not familiar with what exactly Orthodoxy is. And I think that's a big problem is like, I think we see Jay Dyer, and he's got, I mean, which is more than I could ever dream of, 60K subscribers on YouTube, which is great, but we see these Catholic accounts that have upwards like 500,000 subscribers, and people are very in tune to what Catholicism is, and they know what it stands for. And I think that Orthodoxy has not been promoted in America as well as it should have been, right? And I mean, of course, that's because we came to America in the 19th century through, St. Herman, St. Innocent, through Alaska.
Right.
And it's this very, like, people in the West tend to view it as a very Eastern, like, mystic type of religion, and no one's really sure exactly what it is. And I think that it needs to be promoted much more than it is. It needs to be evangelized, right? And I think people receive it well when they understand what it is. And, Nick Fuentes spoke positively of both Jay and myself on his show. And I think that's great. Two of these guys who he's met who are Orthodox Christian, one of them has a 200 level IQ, and the other one is like taller and stronger than him. And I think that's a good thing. I think, I think that bodes, it bodes well, and I'm praying, God willing, he would consider converting. But, I think that it's received well when people understand it. I think that the unfortunate reality is that people don't understand it well.
Right.
And that could be for a number of reasons. I mean, it's not the Christianity that people here in America are used to. And I think that's why these, groups like the Western Rite, for example, I think that that's a good thing in terms of evangelization. Right. I think that it can bring a lot of people who are used to Catholicism or high church Protestantism to Orthodoxy.
Right.
So I think that we need to encourage the evangelization of Orthodoxy, and I think it's going to be received much better. It's just something that here in the West we're not used to it.
Right.
And I think if we were to go to Greece or to Russia or to one of these areas where Orthodoxy is dominant, I think that we would see a much different reception of people being Orthodox Christian than we do here.
But that ethnic component though is a major hurdle for many people trying to get into the Orthodox Church. So you bring up Greece or Russia, and sure, that's great, but in the American context, I can't tell you how many emails I've got from people who maybe listened to a stream or two, they become interested in Orthodoxy, then they go to a church and they said it was a terrible experience, people were rude, it was like they didn't want them there, because there's such an ethnic cultural component to it that it is interesting too when I think about the arrival of Orthodoxy in America, that the historical movement of the world at that time, you have Alexander moving east over to India, and then the sort of tides of 15th century Europe is about movement towards the West, going into South America, North America. And so Orthodoxy actually takes, as the world moves to the West, Orthodoxy moves to the East, and eventually it comes back around. And really that then symbolizes to me the completion of sort of the interconnectivity of the world, like globalism. And so now, like if we existed 120 years ago, your grandparents couldn't be Orthodox. How could they if they were in America? One, the lack of churches, but the cultural division here, and then the access to the theology with the internet, with, again, being able to be on the platforms you and I and other Orthodox people are. It's really the first time in human history that Orthodoxy can present itself on a global scale, because it is so localized, historically speaking, and then so tied to those different places. And so, agreeing with you with the Western Rite, Orthodoxy, at least theologically speaking, is all about the sanctification of culture. And so Orthodoxy infuses itself within pre-existing cultures and languages. And so, hopefully we can do that here in America. I see the biggest hurdle, though, being secularism. And just the sort of schism in most people's minds of the role of religion. And again, that's what Orthodoxy First trying to discuss and sort of bridge or collapse that wall between or separation of. But yeah, I think that this is really the first time in world history where Orthodoxy could be heard by people who had never been exposed to it.
Right. Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
almost kind of
Yeah,
early. It's kind of young at a global scale.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that what you're saying about, like, I'm sure many people have gotten in touch with you about their feelings like there's this like ethnic club, at Orthodox churches, and it's very unfortunate. And growing up in a Greek church, we're raised in Greek culture, and we have to remember as Orthodox Christians, especially being myself, Greek and Russian, and it's like that doesn't come before my Orthodoxy. And I think that that's why you had Elder Ephraim discourage organizations like AHEPA within the Greek Orthodox Church, because these are nothing but ethnic clubs
Right.
that promote the Greek ethnicity over the Orthodox faith.
Yes.
And I think that you're going to run into these issues when you have such a focus on the ethnicity. What I love about the ROCOR and the Western Rite as well is how convert heavy it is.
Right.
And it's because when you go into these churches, they've already dissociated entirely from the old world. These are churches where their entire focus was in the New World here in America and creating an Orthodox community here in America. And I think that the problem is still in the Greek Archdiocese and in the diaspora, and this focus on wanting to spread this Greek culture, and that Greeks are number one, we're the cradle of civilization and everything. And these ideas need to really stop, because we need to put our orthodoxy above all of that. Be proud of your ethnicity. It's not to say that it goes away, but make sure that you're putting your faith above that and before that, because otherwise you're going to discourage converts, and they're going to come in and they're going to be like, oh, well, I'm not Greek or Russian. Why do I belong here? Why don't I go to a Catholic church? It looks pretty similar, you know? And I think that that's an unfortunate reality of our current situation.
Right.
So when we continue to grow, when we continue to have this online presence, we're going to start shattering these thoughts that people have about orthodoxy.
Right.
They're going to start seeing that more people who are less focused on their ethnicity are Orthodox Christian, and more people who put more of an emphasis on their theology are Orthodox Christian. It's not just the Greek club. It's not just Russian culture.
Right.
It's Orthodox Christianity. It's Christianity in its fullest form.
No,
and more and more people will realize that.
Yeah, I love that, and also it ties then to the same sort of over veneration of ethnicity and race within like the wingnats and sort of the other side of the sort of the right or the more conservative movement, is that there is no sort of transcendent power within their worldview. A lot of these people are atheists or pagans, often pagan. And you also see a lot more homosexuality and degeneracy amongst them as well. But they're trying to search for an identity, because within globalism, and especially if you come from European nations or have a European heritage, there is a real effort to erase all that. And so just side note regarding that, I do want to say that I believe that not as so much that it's like this large agenda, it's anti-white. The anti-white stuff is really just anti-Christ. And then the historical provenance of the tradition, this Mediterranean tradition, moves itself into European, Eastern, and Western European nations. And so those people then have embodied those values for so long that the destruction or the anti-white, it's really just trying to destroy Christendom and the remnants of Christian values. But because that is the case, so many people in the West, young white men or whatever, they see the anti-white stuff. They get lost in why that's happening. They say, oh, well, this is because of my racial identity. And then they become Nordic pagans and they pray to Odin, and they just fall into, like, they collapse. It's a regress, right? It's a regress. Then they're forcibly regress because in the hierarchy of values, they put race at the very top. Not that it doesn't have value, not that it's not something that needs to be preserved, not something that we can talk about in a more nuanced fashion, but that can't be the sort of guiding light of your worldview, because it's not transcendent. In fact, it's back to a worship of creation, which is the same thing that you're highlighting with the sort of lack of Christian values within a Greek or a Russian context, where they're over-venerating their own ethnicity and their own race. That's all too much of attachment to this world, right? In heaven, are you really going to be so concerned about your Greekness or your theosis? So
right, yeah, exactly, yeah. That's what's more important, and people forget that you have to worry about your VOCs more than you do anything else, because your ethnicities, these nations, whatever, they're going to fade away. Your soul doesn't.
Right.
And people tend to forget that, and they tend to prioritize. And there was a guy who commented on my Instagram the other day, and I posted some meme. This comment had nothing to do with the meme, and he was just like, "Talk to me when Christianity does something for the white race." What are you, like? You're an idiot, dude. Like,
right.
What are you talking about?
Right.
And it's like, too many of these guys, like you said, they just get so wrapped up in being wignats, and it's like, stop. Obviously Christianity is right wing, but don't go so far right that you lose sight of Christianity itself, and that you end up prioritizing these other paganistic ideals over the Christian faith.
Right.
Because those are completely antithetical to the Christian faith.
Right. And going that far right leads back to actually being a leftist. So again, there is a sort of circularity there that what is the scale? What's the rubric for left and right paradigms? And when you go that far, pretty soon you're in critical race theory, and there's not a whole lot of difference between Richard Spencer and a leftist.
Right.
It's the same paradigm, and that's the problem. And so getting people to see these things, I think, is useful. But I do see the racial thing because it's real. Like I have a preference. I have a preference for my wife. I have a preference for the way my children will look. And what traditions they inherit. Does that make me a racist? No, I think that every group of people and every individual should be able to have their preferences. And I don't think in-group preference is necessarily bad in any way. No. It depends on where that comes into regards to ideas of like superiority or anything like that. That's where that is anti-Christian. Christ, God, the Trinity, created every living person here. It is the source of life itself. Life is an uncreated energy. So if somebody is living, that is through the blessing of God himself. And so you can't say that, well, I've read the bell curve and I know about IQ distribution and I
right. Yeah.
I mean, because that's not Christian. Yeah, it's not, and really it just comes back to sort of low IQ understandings. And I see a lot of the wingnut stuff as sort of the cul-de-sac of thought you get into when you don't have any transcendent values. So if you are a materialistic atheist and yet you are like looking for group identity, your only option is your actual race and moving back into a sort of eugenics-based understanding of groups. And then that root, as soon as you move it back there, now you're rooted into a Darwinian Wallace theory of evolution. And now you're going to be so far away from really being able to preserve yourself that it's just, now there is no right or wrong. There is no objective morality because you're adopted a Darwinian paradigm. So it's just about survival of the fittest, struggle, fighting each other. And it's like that again. So you see now that paradigm is totally in opposition to what Christ teaches and like the Christian message. So it's just these little subtle things that I think a lot of guys don't see because of the low resolution of their analysis of the situation that then leads them into contradicting and detrimental paradigms.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And you see that far too often in today's culture. It's very disappointing. But this is why we need to work on spreading the Christian faith so people can see why the Orthodox Christian faith, because otherwise people are going to get lost in this belief, and then focusing on like fetishizing their race. And it's like, it's not the point, it's not the end goal. And I hope that more and more people start coming back to Christianity and realizing not to be crazy like that and not to be too focused on things that don't matter in the end.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we had so many topics we were going to hit on. What was some of the other ones were, how do you see orthodoxy? It's something I wanted to ask you because I feel like you have a better pulse just given your age and your generation on maybe the Gen Zers, the Zoomers, right? I don't have my finger on the pulse of the Zoomers like you do. So how do you see orthodoxy in regards to the Zoomers? Like appealing to some of the younger guys? Because my interaction with most of the guys online is a lot of them have had that are interested in orthodoxy have had some are tangentially related. They grew up or their family may have been Orthodox or they've had a lot of life experience, or they're big readers, something, and then they got them into Orthodoxy. But again, at that pop cultural level, how do you think Orthodoxy can get the Zoomers? Because it's, getting younger men particularly is the goal in my mind.
Right, right. I think the number one thing right now, like I see a lot of guys coming over after Pope Francis' recent remarks with the Fratelli Tutti. I saw after that, I saw a big influx of guys inquiring on Twitter, and I think that obviously the more we evangelize, but the more that Catholicism and Protestantism continue to devolve into this same idea of nihilism and secularism that the rest of the world has, the more people are going to become more and more attracted to Orthodox Christianity. I see them, unfortunately, the Sedevacantist movement is kind of a bit of it's in the way a little bit, because I think that that's like the final stage before someone becomes Orthodox Christian. Like they look at, well, I still want to maintain my Catholicism. I've seen a lot of guys do this, where I want to maintain my Catholicism, but also the Pope is bad. So, why don't I maintain just like that? And it's like, I mean, don't get me started on the mental gymnastics that is Sedevacantism. But, I think it's a doozy. But I think that people are going to more and more start to accelerate and see just the flaws of Catholicism and Catholic theology in general and be attracted to Orthodoxy. I don't know if there's one single way that's best for Zoomers to do it and for us to be able to evangelize, but I think, YouTube shows like yours, like mine, like Jay Dyer's are great ways to start. Right. A lot of guys my age are very interested in this and watching streamers and following them on Twitter and things like Discord, right? I mean, these are great ways to spread the faith, and Orthodoxy takes advantage of this in a really good way. I think when you look at most of these Catholic apologists, a lot of them are older guys, and Dr. Taylor Marshall, he's a good guy, and I think he knows his stuff, although he refuses to debate Jay Dyer,
right?
And I think we all know why.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that Jay Dyer is very attracted to our generation in the sense that he's very in tune with what we talk about. He posts the same types of memes that we do. And I know this, it's like kind of a cringy thing where it's like, the based boomer meme, but it's like, in all seriousness, like he's very in touch with who we are. It's not like that one thing where it's like, hello, how do you do, fellow kids? Like when he has like the old guy with like a skateboard. It's like, that's not what it is with Jay Dyer. He legitimately gets it. And that's something that's very attractive to my generation. Right. They want to see more of these people who are incredibly intelligent speaking about Orthodox theology.
Right.
And that's going to attract them on the theological level. Mm-hmm. And then, and this is what I hope to do, kind of take that and, well, now how do we look at politics? Right. How do we look at the current state of the world? Now that we have already understood, obviously I don't understand everything about Orthodox theology, not even close.
Right,
but
does.
Now that we have a background of, now that we are Orthodox Christian, why don't we now start to look at how we should form our worldview based on this? And I think that that's going to be the most attractive way to appeal to this generation. And continuing to do these podcasts and continuing to be active online and on Twitter and really focusing on your daily, just everyday life and doing things like working out that are attractive to young men and to young women. And they'll be able to be like, well, okay, that's really cool that they can incorporate their orthodoxy into every aspect of their life, and that it defines who they are as a person.
Right.
And that they have these, cool shows and stuff like that. And they want to see all these different attributes so that they can end up relating to it.
Right.
And that's the most important part of this, is they need to be able to relate to us as Orthodox Christians and realize that we're not just some abstract idea, that we're not just Greek and Russian, that we're everywhere. We're everywhere across the globe. And we need to start presenting ourselves in that way.
Right.
I think that's the best way to evangelize.
No, I totally agree with you. I love that. And I've told multiple people, even within Orthodoxy, who maybe aren't on the online sphere, like people at my parish or something, who really see a bleak future for Orthodoxy in America. And I have the opposite opinion. Yeah, I think that it's going to only grow as long as a lot of because of the quality of some of the Orthodox content creators, I think is really strong. And as long as we're able to stay on these platforms, I think we're going to keep growing in number. and we really offer a real alternative within the Christian sphere in regards to the degeneracy that's arisen. Again, we have our own battles to face within Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy and dialogue try to ruin my life, but we see within the patriarchs, within Bartholomew, within the Archbishop here in America, we see a lot of this stuff creeping into the Orthodox Church. But at least there, it's at such an early stage, we can almost hurry and get inside the church and then defend it from it. But a lot of other forms of Christianity are kind of totally lost, and they were going to be from the beginning because their beginning points were wrong. But I'm very hopeful of Orthodoxy in the future. And one of the things that I also wanted to ask you about, kind of tangential, but again, still in line with the whole conversation today, is we were talking about discipline, we're talking about masculinity, we're talking about fitness and prayer and reading. But one of the things that I appreciate about you, that I also try to do, is regards to aesthetics and fashion and the way you dress and the way you appear. I like the fact that you have a tie on. You outdressed me today. I mentioned that when we first got on. It's Friday. It's kind of casual for me, so I just had a nice sweater with a hood on, and then he's all ready to go. Oh, crap. But could you speak to why you feel for yourself aesthetics matter? Because I made a video on aesthetics, generally speaking, in regards to a concept and how that relates to the good, the true, the beautiful, Orthodox theology, stuff like that. But I think as a man, if you just ask any woman, maybe one of the first turnoffs they have when interacting with a man, it's like hygiene and not being able to, just be a cleanly, well-dressed, individual. It's not that you have to be a fashion model. It's not that you have to be overly prideful. It's not that you have to spend thousands of dollars on fine linens and different fabric. No, it's not that at all. Get cheap clothes. It's just about looking the part. Like, again, if we are going to be men that are bringing values and bringing other guys back to traditionality, well, how did traditional men dress, and how did they act, and how do they talk, and how do they look? And in doing that, you're going to have to change things about yourself. You can't say like all the time. You can't, talk about frivolous things all the time. You can't always be in the most comfortable. Although my dress clothes, everything's comfortable. So I hate that dichotomy that, dress clothes and then comfortable. Just get comfortable dress clothes.
Exactly.
Key for anybody out there, all my clothes stretch, even these jackets. So
nice.
It definitely helps. Just get stretchy clothes and then you look well fitted and it's always comfortable. But I digress. Yeah. I think that the aesthetics and the way that you present yourself on your show and the way you look, again, it reiterates the message at a visual level without you even saying a word. The fitness, the way you carry yourself, the way you hold yourself, and then the way you dress, it's all expressing the same message. Mm-hmm. And so could you yourself just talk about maybe why you're interested in dressing nice, presenting yourself in the ways that you do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of it, I look at a lot of my favorite leaders throughout history who maybe are not the most topical to talk about, but some of my favorite leaders, throughout history, they presented themselves well, and they had this attitude about them in everything that they did that was strength, right? And it was this good way of speaking and the way that they dressed. A lot of this, it all comes back to the fact that people will listen to them because of how they look and, of course, how they talk and what they're talking about. But the first thing, like you said, what grasps your attention the minute that you see someone? It's the way that they look, right, and how, especially what kind of clothing they're wearing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that's very, very important for us to remember, especially as Orthodox Christians. We need to remember that we are trying to imitate Christ in all that we do and be our best representation of him. And this doesn't mean that we can go around dressing like total bums, right? Because that's not the best representation of what Christ would want us to do. We're supposed to present ourselves well, to evangelize the faith. And I look at a lot of the times, especially, not that we dress like monarchs, but look at the way these monarchs dress, and it's nice to look at that. And it's nice to see this sense of style, right? And looking at that, I'd rather look at that than at some bum, wearing a t-shirt, I don't want to listen to what some guy like that has to say. And I think that when you dress well, people will think, okay, well, this guy's legit. He means business. And that's why it's important to dress well for your job. You know,
Right.
it's why it's important to dress well on a show like this, because you look like you have a purpose. You're there with a purpose.
Right.
You're not just sitting around. You're not just wasting your time. And I think that it goes back to that level of discipline.
Yeah.
Where, okay, I'm actively going to make sure that I dress well. I'm actively going to make sure my suits are tailored,
Yeah.
right? And I think my dad set a great example with this. He's a teacher, and he dresses every day. He wears a suit and a tie to school.
Love it.
And that's something where it's like, I look at teachers from my experience in high school, especially guys coming in with, whatever, jeans and like sneakers with like a t-shirt, maybe a polo on a good day, maybe a polo. Really? I'm not going to take you seriously.
Right.
I'm not going to take you seriously if I'm dressing better than you in school.
Because they don't take themselves seriously, or they wouldn't look like that.
Right.
Like your
Exactly.
dad clearly takes pride and takes himself and his job seriously. Again, that's a masculine quality. That's a competent quality.
Right. That's exactly right. And it really just it says a lot about who you are. You don't want to show up to you don't want to show up to like if you're meeting, let's say, your girlfriend's parents for the first time. You don't want to show up looking like a bum. You want to show up looking presentable, like someone who takes their life seriously.
Right.
And this needs to be a precedent for the entirety of your life, taking everything you do seriously with that level of discipline.
Right.
Because it takes effort to get up and to be like, okay, well, maybe even the night before, have an outfit plan,
Right.
and things, having everything freshly ironed.
Yes.
Having,
Great
like
point.
I said,
I'm all about the ironing and starching the shirts. I just love details. Again, like I feel my love for nuance and details in regards to ideas. The way that I dress, the same thing. I love pocket squares. I love skinny ties. I have probably 30 some different skinny ties. I have like 4 different tie clips. I love vests. I probably have 7 or 8 different types of vests. I like that stuff, and I like details and matching and showing color schemes. Like, it's aesthetic, and it shows that I'm totally conscientious about it because I put it together and I have it on. And so it's not like you have to be overly prideful about it, but it represents the sort of mindset that you in regards to the recognition of details and the things around you and putting things together. Again, harmony itself. And so establishing the aesthetics by presenting yourself in an aesthetic way presents some level of harmony. Now that can go awry, and you can be too prideful in different things. But I think, again, just generally speaking, in the informalized culture that we live in, where everything's getting more and more and more about wearing your Nikes and jeans and stuff like that, you stand out. Like, just by wearing a nice sweater and some nice pants and going out with just looking like a casual guy, like in the 50s or something, you go out, you stand out. And people and they already assume, wow, that guy's successful, I bet he's more intelligent. And then if you can speak and you're actually articulate, like, the world actually kind of opens up to you because people perceive you as having things that they want.
Right. That's exactly right. That's the way you got to look at it. And that's why it's important to dress well to job interviews.
Right.
People don't know anything about you. The first things they're going to notice about you: your style, your hygiene, your speaking mannerisms. And I think that you got to remember that it's important to present yourself well, no matter who you're talking to. And that really does include the way you dress. You're exactly right. Like, there's this attitude where it's like, oh, no matter what, I can just, like the girls wearing like sneakers to prom. That's something that always just drove me nuts, because it's like, I put so much effort into, like, especially like in high school dances and stuff. Like, I would put so much effort in the way that I dressed, and it's like to see girls just like wearing like Vans or whatever to prom. Right. It's like, come on, like take something seriously. Right. Put some effort into your style.
Right.
And it's perceived as like this quirky type of like, okay, and no, it's not good, and it's not a good thing to encourage. And young women and young men alike need to be taught that you got to dress well, and you're going to attract a lot of people if you dress well and you can speak well.
It's really like a superpower, because of where other people are at in their own psyche, engaging with the daily struggles of their own life, and then to see somebody who, again, just the phrase of well put together, it goes a long way. It goes a long way. And then if you're consistently well put together, most likely you are well put together because of it, the effort it takes in all aspects of your life. So, we've already had some people in the comment basically imply that we're being too material, and it's not about. It's like, this has nothing to do with your salvation. It's like, we're not saying that you
got to dress well to go to heaven.
That we're talking in pragmatic terms about the way things actually are and the way society is, and how you can sort of hijack or hack the system, hack the matrix. You can easily hack the matrix by just choosing to dress nice and articulate yourself and just be present in the world. That's half the battle right there. You're already going to outperform the majority of people.
Right, exactly. That's so sad, but it's so true. I mean, that whole idea of dressing well and of speaking well is lost on society today, and it's discouraged even. Right. And so much of this, we're taught to be everything that is wrong. And young men aren't taught to be men anymore, and young women aren't taught to be women. And it really does come back to just the most simple things, like how you dress and how well you take care of yourself.
Right. Well, that basically sums up much of the topics I wanted to get into. It looks like we do have a few super chats, and our buddy Michael Sisko said dressing well is fascist, so be careful there. But good buddy Michael, and then happy belated. I reached out to him yesterday, but yesterday was Michael Sisko, host of, I guess it's St. Edward's Media, or the Michael Sisko Show, I think is what he calls it. I'm not sure. But he threw in $5. Thank you very much, brother. And said, looking forward to us all being together June 12th at the Trad Forum in Argos, Indiana. It will be epic. And I do want to say, everybody watching right now, we do, and tickets are on sale. So reach out to Michael Sisko at St. Edward's Media if you are interested in being present with Luke. You're going to be there, correct?
Mm-hmm. I'll be there.
Yeah, so it'd be Luke, myself, Michael Sisko, Brother Augustine, and E. Michael Jones, and of course some more people. E. Michael Jones will be the lead keynote speaker, but we'll all sort of have speaking roles. But we're all going to get together and actually have a real life in-person event. It's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to it. Again, tickets are on sale, so reach out to Michael Sisko and ask how you can get some tickets, purchase some tickets for that if you're interested. I guarantee you it will be a fun time, and I'm sure festivities will spill over into after event activities. So that's going to be a good time. Rated Musician, good ortho bro and friend, threw in $10. He says, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much, brother. Keep making great videos and spreading the gospel. You two got your own niches, and the Lord is using y'all for his glory. Keep at it. Well, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure Luke appreciates those kind words as well.
Absolutely.
I think that God is using a lot of us, especially when we ask to be used for his will. Sometimes it's difficult to see in our day-to-day lives, but as time goes by, it tends to become more clear. And so hopefully I don't screw things up and I can continue moving in the right direction. But thank you, brother. Pano says, Pano, good ortho bro, Greek Orthodox in Crown Point near Lafayette in Indiana, fellow Hoosier, says, Satan is yo daddy. And I think he was talking about, that was back at 1:30. So I think that was when we were talking about some of the paganism stuff and the wingnut and some of the women and stuff like that. But Pano is a really good guy, so shout out to him, and God bless you and your family, brother. Hope everybody is well. Michael Sisko from St. Edward's Media threw in another $1 with no comment, but thank you, brother. I appreciate the dollar. Simon the amputee threw in $2 and says, making gains in all department at all times. And absolutely, I think, maybe you want to say something to this, but I think that's exactly the sort of message Luke and I want to promote to young men is following Christ is first and foremost a spiritual activity. So you have to get in line with your morality and your spiritual practices. But as you move down the line, the ripple effects of that commitment, it includes bettering yourself in all ways. That includes your fitness. That includes your diet. Fasting when in the appropriate calendar time, but diet, and then the way you dress, the way you speak, the information you take in, the art you enjoy, all this eventually has to reflect Christ at some point. And so, is there anything you'd like to say in regards to making gains in all departments at all times?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think that comes back to our spirituality and our spiritual life. It's got to be a constant process of improvement. And our salvation itself is a process.
Right.
It's not something that's just once and done. So we're always making physical gains and spiritual gains as well. It's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Philo Beto threw in $14.99. Thank you very much, brother. And he says, great channel, DPH. What introductory books would you recommend for understanding orthodoxy? I'll also ask Luke this question, what books he recommends. I tend, as the first book that I recommend, tends to be Vladimir Lossky's Mystical Theology of the Eastern Church. Dyer and I actually covered this book in a video, but it really gives, I think, the best. It depends on where you are, Philo, in regards to entering the conversation of orthodoxy. There's a lot of vocabulary that has to be sort of hurdled to conceptualize what's going on there. So it just depends on where you're at. Sometimes people say the mystical theology of the Eastern Church is a little too heady. Some people think, like myself, that it really helps give meat and has teeth in regards to what orthodoxy is and how it differentiates from other forms of Christianity. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend the Mystical Theology of the Eastern Church if you're looking for a book to begin, an introductory book to begin to understand orthodoxy. But what would you recommend, Luke? I'm sure you've been asked this multiple times.
Yeah, so I would say like the one that really helped me out, especially the ecclesiology of the church, was not that I'm a huge fan of Bishop Gaudiosus Ware, but the Orthodox Church by Bishop Gaudiosus Ware, and it helps with just the general background and understanding of the history of the churches in the Old World, and a good understanding of how the ecclesiology today has developed and why it has developed that way.
Right.
So it's a good, for understanding, especially maybe for Catholics who don't understand the concept of the patriarchy and consider it to be similar to the papacy. If you can get your hands on an older copy, one of the first editions of the Orthodox Church, that's going to be better, because in recent copies it's been edited where a little more friendly towards homosexuality and birth control. So
yeah. And also, you got to watch out some of those British Orthodox scholars like Father John Bear and Callistos Ware, or even Andrew Luth. There's a trend within even some of the Orthodox, ecclesiology in regards to like somebody like clergy like a Father John Bear, desexualizing Christ. I did a whole stream with Subdeacon Mark on his translation of On the Incarnation by St. Athanasius, and how in this book, unlike every translation before, he decapitalizes every reference to he, him, and his in regards to Christ. He never refers, at no point in the book does he refer to Christ as a man, but as a human being or a homo sapien, or representing humanity as a whole. All of these are sort of ambiguous, androgynous, hermaphroditic, I would say, interpretations of Christ, which leads very nicely into a progressive worldview about man defining gender and all this stuff. So we have to be very careful, because the theology about Christ and his personhood is tied to him being a man with man parts, right? Christ had man parts, and the way in which women, are made from the rib, or how you understand that's your own hermeneutics, that's your own understandings. But male and female, even within the Hebrew, is tied within the term for man. So they both imply each other. Again, the modern feminist movements want to tear this down and differentiate it. And so mankind is and man, these are philosophical theological concepts, and to see Father John Bear do away with that, really disheartening. But anyways, yeah. So that's a great reference. Is The Church by Callisto Ware. Michael Cisco threw in another $1 from St. Edward's Media with no comment. Thank you very much, brother. Again, shout out to you and happy birthday. Hope you enjoyed those crab legs or crab cakes. I'm sorry. Yesterday, he mentioned that's how he was celebrating. It's his annual crab cake feast.
That's right. Yeah.
And then the last super chat that somebody threw in is from Ball Enthusiast, and he says, "God bless." So thank you very much, brother. Ball Enthusiast. I don't know if you're new to the channel or not, but thank you for the $6.99. I greatly appreciate that. But that basically sums up much of what I want. I feel like we hit basically on every topic we were wanting to touch on. I feel like it was pretty deep and thorough. Is there anything else you'd want to say before kind of letting everybody know where they can reach you? And I'll throw your links in the video description once we're off here. But is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just stay close to God and hit the gym. That's it.
Those are wise words. Yes, definitely hit the gym. And if you're looking for a workout routine, well, go to Logos Fitness. They might.
There you
go.
Something. That's it. They're great videos. Great videos. So.
But all right, brother. Well, I'll let you go. Again, hope you have a wonderful day. God bless you and your family. God bless you and your girlfriend. Hope everything works out well there. So anyways, as always, to everybody out there, thank you for all the love and support. If you are interested for a website membership, if you like what we're doing over here on Church of the Eternal Logos and you'd like exclusive video content, of which 3 new videos will be up by the end of today, one of which is me describing a story traveling abroad in China where one of my friends who is a former soldier in Iraq, he had PTSD. He was confronted by 8 Beijing Chinese men who were looking for an American to jump. We're on a university. They get in a scuffle. This is about 5 in the morning in Guangzhou, China, and me and my roommate are down in our underwear, and we have to fight off 8 different Chinese guys. If you want to hear that story, along with me attending Gnostic masses, talking about St. Basil's prayers in the Orthodox prayer book, all that stuff is exclusive content. You can check that out over at the website for $5 a month. And so check that out if you are interested. With that, again, thank you guys for everything. I greatly, greatly appreciate. God bless everyone. Hope you have wonderful weekends. And until next time, as always, God bless.